Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Today we have major breaking news coming from around the entirety of the world today, as major news has come out that the Ukrainian armed forces have targeted and destroyed another alleged shadow tanker within the Black Sea today, causing significant damage to the stern of the ship after it was hit directly by a Sea Baby drone. Meanwhile, the United States of America within the Eastern Caribbean has also seized a major oil tanker that was alleged by the United States of America to be violating sanctions in an attempt to make it to a Venezuelan port. This is resulting in a major escalation between the two sides, as the seizure of such a vessel is usually considered to be paramount to a near act of war. Outside of that, we've also gotten additional news from Thailand and Cambodia that the battles on the front line are continuing to rage heavily at this moment, with Cambodia now bringing forward larger caliber rocket systems to fire into Thailand. Thailand has stated in the past that such an action would result in Thailand conducting airstrikes throughout the large majority of the part of the nation of Cambodia, and the Cambodians are also stating that they're ready to initiate talks, but they're not going to initiate them. For one reason or another, obviously. We've also been able to hear additional news that a Russian Il-76 has crashed within Sudan, and we've also seen that there are other major developments coming out of the war in Ukraine, with Belarus now holding thousands of Lithuanian trucks hostage within their country. Belarus is now demanding that for the release of the vehicles, Lithuania will have to give the Belarusians some form of a tribute, almost, to be able to see that those trucks return back to Lithuania. Meanwhile, in Latvia, we're also seeing that they're now increasing their military spending to 4.9%, while the Russian Federation is continuing to deal with issues caused by Ukrainian strikes, with the Syzran refinery now being knocked completely out of action, and the town of Kaluga being plunged into darkness overnight after Ukrainian forces hit the energy infrastructure. We've also heard that the Russians are continuing to threaten serious consequences on the seizure of Russian assets overseas, and that they've also stated that there will be no ceasefires, only an unconditional surrender by the Ukrainians. On top of that, the Belgian government is continuing to show a great deal of hesitancy at the moment about liquidating Russian assets, and is still saying this is a very bad and unwise idea, much to the dismay of the entirety of the European Union, which continues to push forward for that plan to be implemented. We have a humongous amount of major breaking news to cover, and we are, of course, going to be getting on into our largest and most important story of the day, which is going to be taking us directly into the Black Sea, as another oil tanker, we believe that this is now the fifth oil tanker that is alleged to be a shadow tanker in violation of Russian sanctions, or more so, Western sanctions, has been hit and heavily damaged today as a result of another Ukrainian Sea Baby attack. This video footage here actually shows us one of these Sea Babies, the footage published by the Ministry of Defense, sailing right up into the stern of the vessel, the Russian alleged shadow tanker that is, and hitting it directly. We can also see the explosion right here on film, a very significant one, probably channeling most of its force directly through the machinery spaces and shafts for the propellers as it hit. We can also see the second Sea Baby now coming in for its hit on the port side of the vessel. The ship has now suffered two hits, and we can now see that the ship has come to a complete stop within this area, as a third Sea Baby is now sizing up another potential attack against the vessel. We now see this one coming in to make its mark as well. And we can see the aftermath of that explosion right there, with a fourth Sea Baby now lining up and preparing for its hit, possibly as well. It is one hell of a thing to see that a continuous number of ships are continuing to get hit. From what we understand, this vessel was sailing under the flag of Comoros and was attempting to head to Novorossiysk. The tanker is approximately valued at around $30 million, and it can carry about $60 million worth of petroleum products on a single voyage. These attacks are once again making it nearly impassable for the Russian Federation to conduct any activities within the Black Sea at the port of Novorossiysk or at the port of Tuapse. The Ukrainians are most likely going to continue these actions well on into the future, as there's absolutely no reason for them to stop, as the amount of damage that they're causing to the Russian Federation and its critical infrastructure, and not only that, maritime industry, is so large and so incredibly powerful that there's no reason for them to quit. On the other side of the world, another oil tanker has actually reached the headlines today as the United States Armed Forces has officially seized an oil tanker within the area of the coast of Venezuela. From what we understand, the oil tanker was seized by the United States Armed Forces just recently, only about 30 minutes ago, and this is actually a significant escalation between the Republic of Venezuela and the United States of America. The seizure of a vessel such as that usually indicates that a war is practically on the horizon. Of course, beyond it being on the horizon, where is the horizon? We have absolutely no clue. We've been waiting for about 3.5 months now to eventually reach that horizon, and we have never seen the horizon yet. So we don't know when the war is actually going to break out or happen, but these are certainly warlike actions that are being conducted against the Republic of Venezuela in the form of seizing the sanctioned or alleged sanctioned vessel. Inside of Roosevelt Roads, FA-18 Prowlers, or EA-18G Prowlers, have actually been spotted within the area of the Naval Air Station. This is giving us a very good understanding that war is also getting incredibly close, as electronic warfare aircraft are a lot more limited in number than multi-role combat aircraft or multi-role aircraft in general. And these aircraft are specialized in conducting electromagnetic attacks and electronic warfare against enemy targets. For this reason, considering the rarity of these aircraft and the fact that a large number of them, apparently a part of Squadron 132, are now in the theater at this moment, it's leading us to believe that they will most likely be conducting some form of armed action against Venezuela at some point in the future. It's just that we don't know when that's going to be. Meanwhile, inside of Thailand and Cambodia, more significant battles and strikes have been conducted over the course of the day by both sides, with the Thai government now stating that the Cambodians are beginning to deploy large caliber rocket systems or long range rocket systems inside of the area of the border. The Royal Thai Air Force officials have previously stated that any employment of such weapons could trigger deep strike operations into Cambodian territory by that of the Royal Thai Air Force. This has then led to the Royal Thai Air Force to, of course, continue its actions that it has been so far, aerial interdiction among others, but we have not seen any deep strikes that have been conducted yet at this moment. Still, along the border area, we can see that the Thai are now launching Shahed 136 style drones into Cambodia, which you can see in this clip right here. While both sides are not implementing drones in the form of FPV drones or smaller reconnaissance drones in large numbers, it does appear that at least at a minimum, the Thai have taken a couple of lessons from Ukraine and are trying to implement them in a very small form in their armed forces currently. We've also seen that the Thai are now evacuating nearly 400,000 people from the border regions amid the ongoing clashes, according to the defense minister. This is giving us an understanding that Thailand is treating this as a very serious issue, as evacuating 400,000 people is not a simple or cheap feat for that matter. The fact that they're evacuating these people and undergoing the expense, time, and effort to be able to do such a thing is showing us that Thailand has absolutely no ambition or idea that this conflict is going to be ending anytime soon. Additionally, Cambodia is also apparently under that mindset as well, as what appears to be an entire battery or several batteries of RM-70 Vampires, which are equivalent to the BM-21 Grad, were also seen moving towards the border regions earlier today. We can see that in this clip right here. The Grads have their rocket launchers covered in a canvas cover, so you don't see the rocket launchers at the moment, but these are RM-71 Vampires, usually used by Czechoslovakia during the times of the Soviet Union. It appears that there may be an entire rocket battalion here present within the video, maybe possibly several companies of Grad launchers that were seen. It's also showing us that the firepower is quite significant. We've also seen Cambodia state, at least through their senior advisor to the Prime Minister, Hun Manat, he has stated that Cambodia is ready for immediate bilateral talks to halt the border conflict, suggesting that talks could begin within an hour if both sides agree. However, he also added that Cambodia will not initiate the process, requiring mutual goodwill. So while the Cambodians are saying that they could end this thing in an hour, they're saying we're also not going to reach out to end it in an hour, which is also showing that the Cambodians have absolutely really no want or wish to really negotiate with the Thai at this moment. They're just saying that to try and save face on the international stage. Additionally, outside of the Thailand-Cambodia conflict, which is quite clearly raging at this point and moving us on back towards Europe, it's also been seen that there's been quite a decent amount of significant developments within Sudan, or at least what would pertain to the Russians at a minimum, that the Russians have had to endure again today. Just a few days ago, they actually lost what I believe was an Antonov 22 around the area of Khartoum in Sudan. Now, today, they have lost an IL-76 in Sudan as well. Apparently, the IL-76 crashed near Port Sudan, Sudan, with all crew members killed, according to the Sudan Times. The aircraft crashed shortly after takeoff from Osman Digna Air Base, and a military source told the publication that the IL-76 crashed while attempting to land. So I also have to say that this is a little bit confused because they said that the crash happened shortly after takeoff, and then the crash was happening while the aircraft attempted to land. So, I either were missing some sort of detail where the aircraft had a failure and then it tried to circle back around to land, or this story is a little bit confused, but the Russians did lose an IL-76, all things considered, with the entire crew being lost in the process. Not an exactly good thing for the Russians, considering that they're already resource-strapped in just about every single way at this point, including in numbers of aircraft, usable parts, and also pilots to be able to fly those aircraft. Moving us on up into Europe now, it's time for us to get on into the big boy news that's been going on with the war in Ukraine over the course of the day. The Belgian Prime Minister has made a very interesting statement today, as the Belgian Prime Minister, Bart de Wever, has called the European Commission's proposal to use frozen Russian assets to provide Ukraine with reparations loan theft. He has stated that there are certainly better solutions than stealing Russian assets to provide some sort of step. This is a radical step. I think it's very unwise and ill-considered. The Prime Minister allowed for the possibility of filing a lawsuit against the European Commission to block a potential decision on the use of the assets. This is quite questionable, and it also is starting to paint the Wever in not really a positive light, at least as far as we would be concerned in the public. The fact that the Belgians are the only country in the entirety of Europe that is not behind liquidating the assets, they are the one, by the way, that would actually have to go through the process of liquidating them. This is incredibly concerning and fairly aggravating, especially coming from the Belgian Prime Minister, as the entirety of the European Union has voted on dissolving or liquidating Russian assets and then providing that as a loan to Ukraine, and Belgium is the only country that is not behind that. It generally is because Belgium is the one who actually holds the assets and is the one that would have to liquidate them, but at the same time, this is starting to stymie the progress of trying to fund the war in Ukraine. Ukraine cannot find a peace to the war as long as the Russians are demanding unconditional surrender, meaning that for now the war has to keep going well on into the future. If the Ukrainians are not able to find any funding to do that, that's going to be a lot more difficult, if not becoming impossible, to try and outlast the Russians. So for that reason, Belgium is literally holding up the entire process of funding and supporting the state of Ukraine into the future to be able to see that the war effort is a lot more easy to manage for the Ukrainian side until the Russians meet them in the middle. Moving on from that, we've also seen that Latvia is now going to be increasing its military spending to 4.91% of its GDP. In 2026, Latvia will allocate $2.16 billion to defense, the largest amount in the country's history, according to Defense Minister Andris Spruds. This is a fairly good move, and it is showing that Latvia is continuing to increase its military spending and combat capabilities, which are something that, or to be entirely honest, quite alien at the moment, considering that they only have one land forces brigade. This is it, and the rest of them are all reservist brigades made up of part-timers, which is not a good position to be in the modern day. Meanwhile, we have also heard other major news coming out of Belarus, as Belarus is now holding Lithuanian trucks for ransom and demanding a payout from the Lithuanian government to get the trucks back. Lukashenko said he will return Lithuania's trucks currently stuck in Belarus only after Vilnius compensates Minsk for the stolen assets. His list includes confiscated fire engines, the Belarus spa resort in Drushkinica, and the Belaruskala's share in the Klaipeda port terminal. The statement comes amid escalating tensions. Lithuania has declared a state of emergency over the balloons that have been launched from inside of Belarus, and Vilnius is considering seizing Belarusian assets. Minsk, meanwhile, is trying to exploit international disagreements in Lithuania and raise its bargaining position ahead of possible contacts with the United States. At the same time, 185 Lithuanian trucks remain stranded in Belarus and have not been allowed to leave for about the entirety of a month. So it's quite obvious at this point that the Belarusians are quite literally operating like a terrorist state, and they're holding Lithuanian trucks for ransom to try and get something from Lithuania. Lithuania ought to do that in turn and completely shut down their border with Belarus, and also completely suspend the land bridge agreement and treaty that they have with the Russian Federation that allows for them to reach Kaliningrad by land. That ought to teach them a lesson, and then the Lithuanians can say, to reopen the land bridge, you can end the war in Ukraine, and also give us about $500 million, and then we might reopen the land bridge, and only might at that point, not a serious real consideration at actually opening it. Moving on out of that news, we are going to be moving on into the Russian Federation, as we also were able to hear today that Ryabkov has stated, or Peskov more so, that actions taken against Russia's assets, if they occur, will not go unanswered and will lead to serious consequences, putting more pressure on the Belgians once again and getting De Wever shivering in his timbers over in Belgium about possibly seizing and liquidating Russian assets. We also heard additionally that Russia has rejected once again a ceasefire, as according to Preston Stewart, who is retweeted the information onto Twitter, the Kremlin spokesperson Peskov has stated, "We are working on peace, not a truce, a sustainable, guaranteed, long-term peace." Keep in mind, everyone, that the Russians were actually the one who brought up the idea of proposing an energy ceasefire several days ago, and now that the Ukrainians are saying, yeah, we might actually accept that, now they're going, oh, you silly buffoon, we're into a long-lasting peace, not a ceasefire, although they're the ones who literally brought up the idea at all. Moving on out of Moscow, we also saw that due to this stupidity, the Ukrainians plunged Kaluga into darkness, as if you are that dark in the brain to come up with absolutely dumb statements like that after you propose the energy ceasefire, the Ukrainians are going to make sure that you live in darkness by knocking out the power grid. That's the end of that clip. And moving us on down and into the area of Belgorod and Voronezh, we also were able to hear that Belgorod and Voronezh came under significant attacks last night as well, with these clips giving us a little bit of an indication of what was happening in both of the cities. You can hear the faint sound of air raid sirens. And we also saw in this clip as well citizens gathering around in the streets. And that's the end of the clips, but generally showing us a bit of a small little look at the cities of Voronezh and Belgorod that were under attack last night. We've also seen in other news coming directly out of the war in Ukraine that the Russian Federation is using the occupied Donetsk airport at the city of Donetsk, seen here, as a significant basing and operational field for drone launches. Near to this eastern side of the tarmac, right here, we can actually see a large number of hangars and launch platforms have been built for drones that have been used not only on the front lines of Ukraine, but in deep strike attacks against the state of Ukraine at large. Apparently, this is becoming a fairly new Russian tactic, and they're starting to flesh it out and build up the size and abilities of it quite greatly in an attempt to try and use the Donetsk airport, which has been completely unusable since 2014, as some form of a launching and operational base for their drones. Hopefully the Ukrainians will be able to strike this fairly soon, as it's not like this is incredibly well hidden, at all for that matter. And so with that, folks, that is actually all of the major breaking news that we have for the day. I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. I hope y'all have enjoyed, and if y'all have, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. We put a lot of work and effort into trying to make sure that this news is possible every single day, and we got to give a massive thanks and a huge appreciation to all the folks on Patreon who support this channel and help us to make these sorts of projects possible for us to do as our full-time job. And not only that, we have to give a huge shout out to all of the super chatters on the live streams as well, who also make that possible. So humongous thanks to all of y'all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all in the next one.